Does suffering on earth have any spiritual value? Few things on earth are good or bad in themselves. Money, power, knowledge and even love can be used for either good or bad purposes and consequently can turn out to be good or bad, used centered on God or Satan. There is no middle ground. Suffering also follows this characteristic. Suffering can have meaning or not, it can have value or not. For example, suffering experienced in an attempt to achieve a noble purpose, and which as a result produces greater strength of character and greater depth in one's ability to love, or which produces greater sensitivity to the suffering of others. Others certainly has positive spiritual merit and undoubtedly contributes to spiritual advancement. Suffering has value only if it allows us spiritual growth, but it does not give more or less merit in the hereafter unless it is related to God's restoration providence like Moses, Jesus and the people who followed them and then paid the consequences even with physical life and martyrdom. For real, just look at the recognition that history gives to people who endured great suffering for the sake of God, of the nation and others, to understand the validity of the principle affirmed here. It is often through suffering that individuals come to understand and appreciate the grace, love and ideal of God or the Messiah himself. Therefore, if someone can see suffering as a means to separate himself from Satan, to understand God more deeply, or even better to try to resemble God more, as his children, then such suffering will have great spiritual value. If suffering will bring him here on earth to understand evil and Satan, understand God and free himself from original sin and fallen nature, and to be able to live in God's world and the spiritual world, then in that case suffering will bring spiritual benefit and advancement, but it has to be built up here on earth. Those who suffer cannot necessarily get closer to God, separate themselves from Satan or change their lives.